Hi there and welcome to Yarnspirations. I'm Mary Beth Temple for Hooked for Life, and in this video we're going to take a look at the Loopy Corner crochet pillow. Now this pillow uses both the Bernat Blanket and the Blanket-EZ. Now the Blanket-EZ, if you've never worked with it before, has the loops already in it. It comes sort of pre-looped, and it's advertised as being perfect for people who don't already knit or crochet. But since we do, there's some cool stuff that we can do with it as well. So I'm pretty excited about this pattern. So what you get is a square pillow that has loops on one side and smooth on the other side. So to make this pillow, what you're going to need is 2 balls of the main color, which is the Bernat Blanket. Now we show it in the photograph in both vintage white and dark gray. I used the dark gray in the video because sometimes white is hard to see on a white background. So 2 balls of that. You're going to need 1 ball of the Bernat Blanket-EZ, and that is also in the dark gray or the cream to coordinate with whatever solid color you're using. You're going to need a crochet hook size USL 11, 8mm, or size needed to obtain gauge. You're going to need a 20-inch square pillow form, that's 51 centimeters, and you'll need a 1-inch or 2.5 centimeter button. Also, I used a couple of stitch markers because one of the things I like about this pillow is there's an overlap in the back, so you can easily put the pillow form in or take it out as you need to, just to keep things stored or keep them clean. So let's take a look at this fun new way to use the yarn. So let's take a quick look at the notes at the beginning. So you can read this along on your pattern page, but the loop section of the pillow is worked using main color for background single crochet rows, while holding the EZ yarn, which is A, in front of main color yarn and working each single crochet with main color around each space between loops of EZ yarn. The stitches are never worked with or into a yarn. If you remember that, that is half the battle. And we do have some photos here. But the other thing we want to just remind you, the loops are always going to be on the right side of the work. So no matter whether you're stitching a right side row or a wrong side row, the loops are only going to be on one side of the work. There's never going to be loops on the other side. So we're going to take a closer look at the detail of the stitching later, but I want to get you started. And again, I swear to you, I'm making it look fiddly because I'm trying to do it on camera and in a way that you can see it. But once you get started, this is really simple stitching. You just sort of have to wrap your brain around it. So the first thing that we're going to do is chain 2. With the main color, and you're going to single crochet, put 2 single crochet in second chain from hook. 1, 2. Join A, leaving 3 loops of A yarn at the side edge to weave in later. Now, I tried a half a dozen different ways to join A. The easiest way I thought to do it. So there's my 3 loops that I'm leaving. Honestly, all I did was I grabbed the space between the 3rd and 4th loop and I pulled it through. Because trying to make a slip knot with that would be really, really fiddly, and it's just not worth fussing with. And then we're going to turn the work. Let me check my pattern here. Turn the work and chain 1. So yes, the chain 1 is going through the EZ yarn, but that one time I just found it was the easiest way to join. So now I'm working on my first, well, technically it's the 2nd row, it's the 1st row with the loops in it. It says holding A yarn in front of work towards the right side, because this is a right side row. So ignore these guys, right? These are the ones that we're just leaving there so we have some yarn to weave in later. So with A yarn in front of work towards the right side's facing me, this is right side row, and main color above, chain 1 with main color, which I've already done, with main color catching A yarn between 2 loops, 2 single crochet in next single crochet twice. So there are my 2 single crochets. Here are my loops that I want to work around, and I want them on the side of the work that's facing me. So I'm going to pull 1 to the front, I'm going to single crochet in that first single crochet, but I'm catching the little bit of yarn that is between two loops. So there's one, and now I'm putting two single crochets in the same single crochet, but I want two loops because I'm making two stitches. You want one loop per stitch. So once again, I'm just moving that loop over a little bit. I'm going to single crochet into that same spot, and then I'm going to do the same thing again. I want two single crochets in my last single crochet. So there's one loop. I'll pull them over. I'm inserting my hook in the stitch, in the actual single crochet stitch, but also under that yarn, which is that little space between the loops. And then I'm going to pull that loop over, and I'm going to do that again. So at the end of this row, which is the second row, I'm going to have 4 single crochets. And I'm going to have 4 loops because I'm going to have one loop in every single crochet. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, ignore him. He's hanging out to the side. That's where I did the join. So for the third row, we're going to turn the work in chain 1, holding the yarn in back of the work towards the right side. So again, I want to sort of untwist it. I want these loops kind of lay flat because I want them on the side away from me. So there's my 4 singles, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to, with main color, catching a yarn between 2 loops for each single crochet across, 2 single crochet in first single crochet in each of next 2, 2 in the last. So here's my first single crochet. There's 1. Now I'm bringing the loops over towards the right just the least little bit, and again I'm stitching between the loops. So there's 1, and I'm going in the same single crochet, but I want to go after the next loop because remember, I want 1 loop for every single crochet. Now I had 4, so I'm going to put 2 here and 2 here. So each of these 1, I'm going to put a single crochet in there, catching the yarn. So I caught that guy here. Now I'm going to move it over and catch it here. And then I'm going to do 2 in the last one. So there's 1, 2. Now I've had 2 increases, so that should give me 6 single crochets in the row, and that will give me 6 loops in the row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to put some more rows on this, and then we're going to look at those stitches a little more closely. Again, I feel like when the piece is a little bigger, you'll have an easier time looking at it. So give me a couple of minutes to catch up, and we'll take a closer look at those stitches. So let's take a closer look at the right side row. As you can see, my piece is growing, so I wanted to come back and show the stitches again. I just think it's a little easier to see when the piece is bigger than it was at the very beginning when we were started. So now I'm on the right side. Now sometimes on the right side row you're doing an increase at the beginning of the end, and every 4th row you are not. So make sure that you know what row you're on when you're working on your pillow. Let me make sure, I'm going to do this with the increase at the beginning of the end so you can see how many loops that I count. So I'm stitching in to the main color here, and I'm not stitching with the loop yarn, but I have to put 2 single crochets in that first one. So I've done 1. And now I'm going to hike this loop over a little bit because I want to have 1 loop for every stitch. So I'm putting that second single crochet in that first stitch. Now moving across, I want to make sure that I have, here's my loopy yarn. So on the right side rows, I like to sort of spread it out across the top so I can see what I'm doing. So now, until I get to the last stitch, I'm going to single crochet in each single crochet across, but I'm going to make sure that I insert my hook under the space between the two loops to make sure that that yarn is caught there. So going on to the next stitch, into that single crochet, but catching the space between two loops. And I'm going to do that all the way across. Now it's really not as fiddly as it looks. One of the reasons sometimes it looks a little harder when I'm doing it is because I'm trying to do it and keep a camera angle at the same time. If you're sitting at a table or you're sitting with this in your lap, it is really not as twisty as it looks. You can see the loops are all facing towards me. Always the loops are on the same side and there's nothing on the other side. So I'm going to do that all the way across. And then when I get to the end there, I'm going to do 2 single crochets, but I'm going to go between the loops twice. I don't want to put the 2 single crochets between the same 2 loops because I want to have lots of loops because that's what gives me all my texture. So again, coming up to the end, I have 1 single crochet left. I'm going to put 2 single crochets in it. So I'm going to go between the next 2 loops, find the other leg of that single, and I'm going to put another single crochet in that same space, but I'm going to move 1 more loop over so that I get plenty of loops. Whoops. I'm going to turn the work and chain 1. And then let's take a closer look at these wrong side stitches. So I'm basically doing the wrong side row the exact same way that I did the right side row. I'm single crocheting with the blanket yarn into the blanket yarn, and I'm catching the loops, the loop yarn in between the actual loops. So it's the same function that we did on the right side rows, except this time I want to keep the loops away from me because I always want the loops on the same side of the work. So let's show it with an increase. Remember, not every row has an increase. You'll have to follow along in the pattern. But every time that there is a stitch, I'm going to grab 1 more row, 1 more stitch on the other side of the next loop. So one of the things I know that people have asked about this pattern is, you know, how can I, it's hard to see, how can I tell how many stitches I have in each row, even though the pattern very helpfully tells me how many I should have. But if you make sure that you are moving across the loops for every single stitch that you do, whether there's an increase or there's not an increase, you will have the same number of loops as stitches. So when you want to count and make sure that you have done your increasing properly and everything's going the way it should go, you can just count the number of loops in the row. So here's my last stitch, my last single crochet. We're going to show that as an increase. So I've done 1 in that last stitch, and I'm going to do a second one, but once again I want to move 1 more loop over. Alright, so once again, no loops on the wrong side, all the loops on the right side. Alright, as is often the case, I'm making a smaller sample than you will, but you are going to follow along in the instructions and finish the 9th to the 28th rows, at the end of which you're going to break so break off that loopy yarn. Leave a couple of loops like we did at the beginning so you have something to tuck in and weave in later. Now we're continuing with the main color only for the smooth section. So we started here and we did increase, 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 increase. Now, you would think it would be all decreases from here on out, but there is 1 more increase row, and here is why. The gauge with the loops is a little different than the gauge without the loops. So even though you technically will have more stitches on the diagonal on this side than you did on this side, it's to make the pillow come out square. So trust us, we have done the math for you. So the first thing I'm going to do on a wrong side row, chain 1, single crochet in each of first 8, then 2 single crochet in the next single crochet in each of next 8, 4 times, and that will give you 4 more stitches. So you can see you had 44 here, and at the end of this row you're going to have 48. So I've turned the work, chain 1, I think I'll do 4. So I'm going to stitch 2, 3, 4, and then in that next single crochet I'm going to put 2 single crochets, which is basically what you were doing on the edge stitches with the loops, only now we don't have the loops to fuss with. So this part goes much faster. So you're going to do that all the way across, and then we will start the decreasing and we will take a look at that. So here is the decrease row, and again we're going to repeat this a fair amount. So I have turned the work and chained 1. We're going to single crochet 2 together. So remember, that's insert your hook under the first stitch, yarn over and pull it up. Insert your hook in the next stitch, yarn over and pull it up. That gives you 3 loops on the hook, 2, 3, yarn over and pull it through all 3. So that is a decrease. And then you're going to stitch all the way across in single crochet to the end, and then you're going to do that single crochet 2 together again. Now again, following the instructions, you're going to have 4 rows with the decrease, and then 1 row in which you work even, by which I mean you put 1 stitch in every stitch and you neither increase nor decrease. And then it says repeat those last 5 rows 4 times more, and then you will have 8 stitches remaining. And then the last 4 rows are all written out for you. You'll just follow along and finish your work as it's written in the pattern. Let's try that. These loops are in my way. So I'm on my last 2 singles. I'm going to do that single crochet 2 together one more time. So in that last stitch, yarn over, pull it up. Well, that was the next to last stitch, and now in the last stitch, yarn over, pull it up. I have 1, 2, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 3. So my decreasing is going to happen on the smooth side. So thank you so much for joining me here for the Loopy Corner crochet pillow here on Yarnspirations. I'm Mary Beth Temple for Hooked for Life. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for fresh content weekly on knitting, crocheting, and other yarny stuff. Thanks so much, you guys. Bye-bye.